give you an update on the current fire situation and where we're going and so forth. So the current fire situation, I'm Deputy Incident Controller at Bairnsdale ICC. The current fire situation is that we've had a mild few days, which has allowed us to do some really important preventative works. We've constructed some control lines and there's some strategic burning that's going on. And the rain and the weather conditions have allowed us to do that. It's lessened the fire activity. However, we haven't had any rain in the northern part of the fire. And come tomorrow, there's going to be a spike day and there'll be increased fire activity in the northern regions of the fire due to higher winds at elevations. Okay, so the communities like Omeo are going to face significant threats tomorrow. Unfortunately, the last couple of days, the smoke has not allowed us to get any strategic information because we haven't been able to use aircraft to find out what the fire's doing for the majority of it. We use aircraft as a tool to let us know what the fire's doing, and in conjunction with a lot of other tools, but it's one of our major assets. So the conditions have cleared today and there'll be a lot more strategic information, and we've put processes in place so that we can do our planning in a lot shorter time frame for what is going to be a spike day tomorrow. Just for everybody's awareness, we can't put this fire out. It's too big. We don't have enough resources, so I'm not going to stand here and lie to you and say we can. This is going to be a long and prolonged event. It can last weeks, if not months. Okay, so it's no use raising anybody's expectations that we can put this out. The only thing that could put this out is rain, but the amounts that we've got and the amounts that are forecast are not going to do that. It would need in the order of 200 millimetres of rain within a week to put out the fire. So we have to work on it slowly. And from a state perspective, when we deal with emergency incidents, we have 6 strategic priorities. And I'd just like to speak about the top 3 for this event because they're the main ones that we're focusing on. So number 1 is the protection of life. Life's paramount. That's protection of the community, you people, and also the protection of our emergency services workers. So that is at the forefront of every single thing that we do. The second priority for the state is emergency warnings and advice, issuing timely warnings and tailored warnings to assist the members of the public to look after themselves. And we've got 1,000 firefighters on this East Gippsland fires, and we can't stop it. Our warnings and advice is our greatest tool to keep you safe. So that's really the main message that I would ask all of you to take home and to pass on to everybody that you speak to, is please listen to the warnings and advice, because we will warn you when we want you to leave, where we want you to go, and what we want you to do. And that is to keep you safe. So, for example, we're going to go through a cycle. We've had a lull in the first part of this week, and now we're going to have a peak couple of days. Everything's going to warm up today and ahead of some stronger winds tomorrow, which will be a peak day. And then we'll look like going through a lull again, but we could keep going through that cycle for a few more weeks to come. So we ask a lot of you. What we're asking for is that you evacuate when we ask, and then what we do is we open roads, we give access to residents, and we get you back to your place of residence as soon as we possibly can. But we have to make sure it's safe before we get you back there. So a priority for us is to get you back to your place of residence after you evacuate. However, we're then going to ask you to evacuate again on the next spike day. If you don't want to return, we have facilities and relief centres set up where you can stay for long periods of time. No one's going to kick you out of a relief centre. But if you choose to go back, we just ask that you heed the warning and evacuate again. And this might happen in a cycle, it all depends on all of the different communities. Now, fire won't burn intensely through the same area twice. It'll go through and it'll burn all the fuel. But what we're doing is, so some communities will go back and they'll start the recovery process. But other communities will go back because they were under threat, but the fire didn't exactly get to them, and then they might be safe for a couple of days. However, next spike day, we ask them to evacuate again, and then we'll get them back as soon as it's safe. So if everyone could really be patient with that and work with us and trust us, it will be really important for us to keep everybody safe. Now, I'll give you an example of how all that works. In 2009, we had Black Saturday. During those fires, we lost 172 lives. To date, with this fire, which is much larger than Black Saturday, we have 3 fatalities that are associated with it. And, that's a significant improvement in keeping people safe, and it's a direct result of messaging, warnings and advice. And those messaging, warnings and advice came out of the recommendations from the Royal Commission that occurred after Black Saturday. So my father, my aunt and my uncle all lived at Kinglake on Black Saturday. They were all there, and the fire came along and it roared up on them, and they had no idea it was coming. There was no communications, there was no warnings. It was more of a word-of-mouth phone call. There was no organised warning system. They all got together, they jumped in a car, they went in one direction. The road was cut off by fire, they turned around, they had to go back in the other direction. They were cut off again by fire, so they couldn't get down the mountain. They had to go back to the CFA fire station at Kinglake West, where the local brigade put the trucks around the tin shed and stood by with their hoses and protected the people that had made it to there. So, and I spoke to my father, he's a pretty brave man and a pretty strong man, but when I spoke to him, that he'd been terrified. Like, his voice was shaking when I spoke to him in the morning, and he was just lucky. He was lucky to get to a place of safety. Now, let's come forward 10 years. We've got these fires. People are listening to our advices. We've got messaging systems in place. We can inform you of when the fire's coming, where we want you to go, and we can get you to safe refuges where we can protect you. Okay, so if everyone understands that, that's really valuable, and that is why, it's a second highest priority in our state's strategic management. Now, a third priority is critical infrastructure. So the people that heed the advice and they evacuate, and we know where they are, and they come to the centres, that means that we don't have to worry about protecting them and using resources to keep them safe. Because if they choose not to, then we're forced, because they're still our priority and we will keep them safe to the best. As long as it doesn't compromise firefighter safety, we will keep them safe wherever they are, but it stretches our resources. And when we're dealing with a fire on this scale, I'm not sure if you're aware, like the perimeter of the fires just in East Gippsland is 1,500 kilometres. So if you lit a fire all the way on the road from Melbourne to Brisbane, that entire length's on fire. Or in world scales, from London to Berlin. Now, we can't resource that whole thing, and that's our biggest problem, is because of the area and the size of it, we just can't resource it. So that's why we need to rely on you to do that. And when we have to spend less resources because people are helping us by listening to the messaging and going to places of safety where we've allocated resources, then we can devote resources to protecting critical infrastructure, which is our number 3 priority in the state. Critical infrastructure is stuff like water, power, communications, gas, all of these essential services. And by being able to protect those essential services means that we can get you back into your communities sooner. So rather than have to rebuild essential services, we can get you back, because it's no use being isolated in a community You might stay on the property, the fire might come through, wipe out all the houses around you, and then you're there. But you're really not safe because you don't have water, you don't have communications, you don't have electricity. So it would be preferable if you were in a relief centre, and which allows us to protect the critical infrastructure and proceed with the recovery process faster. So I hope everyone understands that, and we'll be around for a little bit there's people around to answer some questions at the end of this. So for me, that's a really, really important part of what we're doing, is developing, we're reaching out, we're trying to engage with the communities, and we're asking you to trust us and to work with us in following the messaging and doing all of that stuff. So that's how we will keep you safe during this, because we can't get a fire truck to your house or your street even. Okay, so we're not dealing with a normal occurrence of fire. In a normal occurrence of fire, you throw me a strike team or two and I'll go and stand in front of it and we'll knock it down and we'll all be going home and having dinner somewhere. We can stop that stuff, but we don't have the resources to be able to do that with this on such a large scale. What else have we got? So, I'll just get some more, make sure you got all the info. Yeah, so there's currently 1,000 firefighters working on the fire ground. So that's just, I know when we say we haven't got resources, that's still a lot of resources. And we have US firefighters coming in constantly to support it. And in other times and in other years, we'd have people from New South Wales, we'd have people from South Australia, Tasmania, all the other states coming to help us. But they've all got problems that are just as bad, if not worse than us. So we can't get that support from them. And that's another thing that's limiting our resources. I really just want to reinforce that the main message and the main tool is for everybody to, in CFA we have some values. There's some values that we expect of our volunteers, and we're actually having to reach out to the general public and ask you to embrace some of those values. And one of them is being alert. So we want you to be attentiveness, alertness. So be attentive and alert, and be aware of your surroundings. Pay attention to the Vic Emergency app, ABC and Sky News, all of those channels through which we can communicate to you. The other ones that we have is that we need you to be agile. We may need you to pack up everything and evacuate at a moment's notice. We're asking a lot, but we're asking it to keep you safe. And then, we need, the other traits are courage, determination, compassion. We're going to ask you to have courage and determination, because this isn't going to go away overnight. This is going to be a long-term thing. And we need to have compassion, because we need to look after the others in our community, because there will be circumstances where our house or our community is not burnt down, but our neighbour or our neighbouring community is burnt down. So I'd ask for you to think about that and embrace some of these traits. And I know we're asking a lot of you, but we're asking so we can keep you safe and so that we can all get through this and start the recovery process. So recovery is actually working. We've begun recovery in some areas, and it's actually challenging because we're having to commence recovery at the same time as we're fighting fire. Normally you would go and fight a fire and then commence recovery at the end. We're having to do both. We've got I know that there was a skidder that went through between Genoa and Malakuta, so there's actually a small access. There is vehicular access just to get us some essential goods down that trail. We've got enormous support from the Defence Force. The Defence Force are flying essential goods into all of these isolated communities. There are many communities that are still isolated. So we are doing everything that we can, and we're doing it in a manner that, we sort of prioritise things, and it may not always make sense to you, but I would ask you to trust us because, like I said, our priorities are get people back into their communities as soon as it is safe, and then we ask you to maybe evacuate again or assist us with the recovery process. So I hope that makes sense and gives you a bit more information about what's going on. Our expectation, like I said, by the end of today, we will have a few more predictions about what the southern half of the fire is going to do, but it will be more subdued than the northern half of the fire. There's a lot more activity to the north, so our initial planning will be around Omeo, but our eyes aren't closed to the southern part. We're still watching it, but we're just prioritising resources and so forth. So we are trying to keep everybody as informed as possible, because like I said, this communication and this transfer of opening the channels of information and of trust is what's going to help us to keep you safe. All right, do you?
I see there's 767s. Have you got access to those planes? I see them in Australia, but I don't know how many you've got. When you talk about resources, have you got a number on the resources that you've got?
I don't have a number on the resources that we do have, but we can get that published. We get a newsletter out from the ICC at Bairnsdale, which will have that information. But like I said, there's significant impact on in New South Wales, and a lot of resources have. So, and also we also are limited on the times when our aircraft can work due to the enormity of it and the smoke. So, as I said, our priority is to keep our emergency services people safe as well as you. So sometimes that limits us being able to use aircraft to attack the fire. But we do have a strategic plan for it, and that's based around ensuring that we get this warning stuff right. And there's a lot of work being done to go out and engage with local communities, and a lot of that engagement's done through the CFA brigades, because in those communities they're our local knowledge and our local resource, and they are our best source of information in most cases on how to protect that community. And so, there's, I'm going down to Lake Tyers straight after this, and we've got the Shire helping us out. They're going to construct a control line in some land around some of the houses there in consultation with the local community. So that's what we've been doing this week, and that's what we'll continue to do. And that's how we hope to get through this. Okay. Yeah. Have I covered everything else? I hope so. All right. Alan Rice from VicPol, who's the Municipal Emergency Response Coordinator for this region, he was meant to be here with me today. However, due to the pending stuff that's going on in Omeo, he's had to devote himself to setting up traffic management and coordinating the police in the Omeo area for response to that. So he apologises for that. We have set up traffic management points, as I mentioned earlier, and those traffic management points, there's the classes of them. There's A, where it's emergency services only, and then when we get down to C, that's when we get to residents and when we get to C, that's when there's residents and essential services only, and we've been issuing permits, a large number of permits in the last couple of days at Bairnsdale to access through those traffic management points, where we have, with assistance from the Shire and the Defence Force, gone through the roads, made sure they're cleared, and made sure they're safe for people to drive back into the communities. And that's an important thing, because when we we lose a lot of firefighters to falling trees and falling limbs. That's one of our biggest dangers on the fire ground, surprisingly enough. Like the fire we can deal with. It's the falling limbs that kill more people, I think, in fires in Australia than firefighters in Australia. That's where our biggest losses have been in the past few years. So the last thing we want to do is send you back into your community without having assessed it for hazardous trees. So that's why sometimes you might see that the roads appear clear or someone's telling you there's no fire activity in the area. But what will be happening is that Shire Defence Force will be going down the road and just making sure there's no hazardous trees. And in a lot of times that's a really quick process, but in some places it takes quite a while. So we understand that. So that's why there's Vic Pol's not here.
Well, with this next strike that's supposed to occur tomorrow,
Yep.
not advising evacuation from sort of this area, or
Yeah. When we will give you, we will issue a warning of emergency warning, leave now, or watch and act, and as part of that warning, so we've got levels of warnings. We have an advice warning, which sort of just tells you what's going on in the area. Then our next level of warning is watch and act. So when we issue a watch and act, there'll be an action that we recommend, and that would be the stage where we ask you if you, because some people want to leave early, some people will leave a bit later. So the watch and act will be watch and act, leave early, and it'll give you a bit of a prediction of what we want you to do and when to leave. So without knowing this exact thing, because I haven't had a chance, you will get a watch and act, recommend to leave now. And then the next level is emergency warning, which means we really need you to do something. And that will either be evacuate now or shelter in place. And shelter in place means that it's nearly on you, and you should have had some sort of planning of what, if you're staying into your homes and so forth at that stage, you should have had some planning about what you're going to do. So watch and act, shelter in place means that it's coming and it's really close. So you probably don't want to be there at that stage, and that's kind of where I'm saying with the messaging. So does that give you an idea of where? Yeah, you will get the warnings. We issue warnings and we update them as necessary. What we've tried to do in the past few days is to scale the warnings back, because the last thing we want to do is for you to get message fatigue. We don't want you to be ignoring the warnings, because we're not issuing them to be pains. We issue them, to be timely and to be accurate for the polygons or the areas where we are issuing them. So they will ramp up again in the next day or so. And if your community or where you live has any threat that's on the horizon, we have triggers around the communities. People in planning have organised, and they've got certain triggers, and triggers, a lot of them are time-based, as in 24 hours to impact or 2 hours to impact, all of these things. So when those triggers are hit, they'll bring a warning to me and we'll have it issued out for whatever location that is. But there's people that have got all of that stuff mapped out and ready. So all I can say, I can't advise you this specific. And if you have any queries, you can just, we'll try and get something answered, or I'll get some information back to you.
In the early stages of the fires, the messages were constantly saying now, we're getting hits and messages, but we weren't actually in the telegram.
Yeah.
So where do we stand with that?
As good as we're getting at messaging and warnings, there are still some issues with those polygons, and so probably we're playing it a bit on the safe side. If there's for some areas it's really easy and it's specific and it works really well, but now and now may be an area where it's got adjoining polygons and you fall into two side by side or something like that. I can't speak about the specifics, but if that's occurring, that's just a time when you would use that attentiveness, be alert to what's going on and start pricking your ears up. Okay, what have I got to know? And then there's other sources of information, you know, the ABC, and even phone numbers that you can ring and they will give you information.
So polygons, what the warning's about, but if we're named, then we still just keep an eye on it. Is that what you're saying?
Sorry?
So the polygon is where the actual warning is designed for?
Because we have to, we use, the messaging system that we use.
So it's now an
But it should, in the title, in the warnings, there should be specific information about what communities, what we want to do, what action.
That was the problem.
Yep.
And like Bruthen was inundated with things about the Bruthen Township. The edges of Bruthen
Yep.
were in the polygons, but Bruthen Township wasn't in the polygons for a long, long time.
Yep,
And so that creates problems
And
for people with work as well.
I understand that. Yep, and we are doing the best that we can with that. And there are some, we've come a long way, but there is still a lot, and there's actually an amazing amount of work going through that, because through this we have realised how valuable that tool is for us. And so there is a lot more work being done, and it will get better as we go. So just have to be patient. And it's better to play safe with everything.
You mentioned before about highways and access. There's trees hanging over, which is highway, less than a kilometre from here as you go towards Orbost.
Yep.
And going into lakes, there's a lot of overhanging trees. Now, if fire does come through, they're the first things that are going to stop people getting out.
If they are on fire.
Well, yeah, but there's a lot of
Yep.
small trees that are going to fall very quickly.
Yep, and we will warn you to evacuate before they are impacted by fire or before they get hit by trees, and that's where we need you to read the messages. And we may tell you to go in one direction because the fire's coming from this direction and we know that's going to happen. But the fact that there's overhanging trees is not an imminent fire danger until they catch fire, and then they could fall and block the road. But that should not occur when we warn you and you evacuate before then. Is that? Yeah. Yeah. I know there's a lot of prevention work that could occur, but that's not something I can discuss with you. That's, yeah. I'm aware of that, and I appreciate your points, but yeah, we can't, like I said, we've got to try and keep people safe until we can get on top of this mess and worry about a lot of those issues later on. So, yeah. No, I'm just going to a community meeting to have a chat to them about their preparation works on my way back from here. Yeah, no, I'm not going there because we're expecting impact. It's just to keep the community informed and engaged so that, like you're raising issues about trees and so forth, we're trying to get in and get on top of some of these things with communities before it gets to us. But, as you could appreciate, we're really limited in resource and time. So we're doing it as best we can with that. All right. So everyone's aware of where we can get information and so forth? We've got newsletters with all that stuff in. Yeah. So please, please trust us. Please listen to our warnings and advice. Please try and be patient. And hopefully we can all get through this without any further loss of life. Yeah. I'm sorry, I couldn't answer you. I'd have to. I would have to check the map and get back to you on that because I'm not.
You don't know how close the fire is to this area?
Not at this stage. And like I said, we're a couple of days. The people in planning will have that information and that will be in the messaging and we will have planning for it. I don't personally have the answer to that question. However, you know, we have been a little limited in if there is fire there, we still wouldn't be able to tell you what it's doing because we haven't had access to the aircraft to get a lot of that information. But we will be monitoring and there'll be a trailer load of work done, or a truckload of work done today in that planning space, so that by tonight we will have a lot more of those informations and there will be advice messaging coming out as a result of all of that. So we'll have a lot more information tonight, but to the best of my knowledge, the majority of the southern edge of the fire has had subdued activity in the past few days. There has been a slight increase in some of the fire activity in some of the northern areas, specifically around Omeo, and it is the northern areas and the highlands that are going to be affected most tomorrow due to strong winds at an elevation. So the strong winds are up at an elevation and they're not so bad down low. And we've also had some moisture down low, which has reduced fire behaviour. So,
So for the truckloads of work you're talking about,
yeah.
Will that mean that we might see the edges of the fire change on the images here? They'll be able to map exactly what.
That all gets put in. I don't know that you will see a significant amount of change into the external perimeter of the map, but what the intelligence gives us is what the fire is actually doing at those spots and just inside those spots, because it's the intensity of the fire that we need to control, and so we can see where the fire's behaving intensely and with that information, and then we know that that's likely to build quicker and break out quicker than an area that's just smouldering, if that makes sense. So that's what the gathering of information is about. Yeah, I really don't expect that you'll see any significant change to the perimeter on the southern part of the fire. It's updated today. Tomorrow could be different because we're expecting winds, but as I said, you know, it's not as bad in the southern half as it is in the north. Yes, sir.
How do you disseminate the newsletter?
Do we have the ICC, the Incident Control Centre? We put out a newsletter. Just check my information.
Don't come on the emergency warnings, but often tonight.
Okay. I will take that on notice and I'll ensure that we get on top of that because it's very important. And that's, you know, like I said, the newsletter is not our tool to get you to evacuate or keep you safe. It's our tool to keep you informed, and that is still very important to us. And so I'll chase up how we can and make sure that we're doing it and that the information on how to access it is better. Anyway.
What's been the top speed of the fire front in this district?
I'm sorry, I don't have the stats. I can give you an example. I was in Hayfield last week last Saturday, looking after, we were protecting Dargo Township, which is up around this area. And this fire back here was a little spot like that. And this fire here was a spot here. And those two joined up in, you know, a few, like hours, like a quarter of a day or half a day they joined up when there was because you'll find that there'll be a lot more activity in the second half of the day because the fuel dries out a bit more, the wind picks up, the temperatures increase, and that's what the fire needs to travel. So yeah, in the second half of the day there was significant wind picked up in that area, and that just joined into one fire when it used to be two separate.
7, 8 miles an hour, something like that?
And it depends where it is. It won't. So, okay, fire doesn't run like that in the bush. So it creeps along as it burns the trees. If it's in the, so you know, it can move along at 1 or 2 kilometres an hour, the fire front. In the grass, it can move, you know, at 6 to 10 kilometres an hour. So it moves a lot faster in grasslands. However, the problem we have is that the wind comes through and it picks up the bark and the flaming embers, and it can throw it ahead. And it starts another spot fire way ahead of the initial fire, like that spot there. You know, that spot has come out of one of these edges here from an ember that's been thrown forward. And there's been evidence that those embers can be thrown forward anywhere up to 30, 35 kilometres. So depending on the winds and the conditions, yeah, and that's what makes the fire move ahead significantly faster. It's not necessarily the creep of the whole front of the fire, but it's these embers starting spot fires and then it all backfills in together, if that makes sense.
There are a number of local contractors with the bush around here.
Yep.
People work closely with them. Like this, do they have specific knowledge of this area?
Yeah, and like I said, that's why we have the meetings with local communities and local brigades, because a lot of,
These guys are probably actually working on the fires now.
yeah, and well, they would be they'd be giving us information, but you know, our engagement with the community, and they'd be speaking to their friends and family, and we try and gather as much information as we can from them on what the fire behaviour, because fire behaviour can be a little different in specific communities, you know, because we might have a general northwesterly wind, but there could be sea wind influences that are affected by some range of mountains which will let it come up from the south and turn west, which is against what the predictions are. So we have some really good mapping tools to work with that. Yep. Yep.
The local people who knew basically more or less what it was going to do. And the other guys, the professional guys, were really calm, cool and collected, but they really didn't know what it was going to do, not specifically. You know what I'm saying? It's like regional people, regional knowledge, probably not being utilised.
I am aware that that is something that occurs, and it's not ideal. However, there is a very, very strong emphasis that we give to our operational people who are out there to consult local knowledge. I know that personally when I work in an ICC or in Hayfield, because I'm based in Sale normally, and I'll work in Hayfield sometimes. When I'm working in Hayfield, I'll call the local captain and the local lieutenant if there's something going on and say, come in, okay, this fire, and they'll tell me, oh, in 2006, the fire came here and it did this and did that. So I do it, and there's a strong encouragement from us for everybody to do it, but there may be some flaws in that. Yeah, it could be a bit more coordinated, and it's something, and it's a point that we can work on. All right, how are we going? Good? All right, yes, sorry.
Just a couple of points. While we still had technology, we noticed that the map was not keeping up with the warning. I realise it's probably a lag, but
Yeah.
and once we lost that technology, of course, we had nothing.
And that's where we need to try and utilise more than one source of information. So don't just rely solely on the Vic Emergency app. That is our best tool. However, radios and telephone and so forth are other tools. So we need more than one.
Also, we thought it would be helpful if you showed on the map the really hot spots. Like it's just all black.
Yep.
So if, you know it's really bad in one area,
Yep.
you made that red so that people would be aware that there it really is bad.
Yep.
Yeah. And the other point I wanted to make, which is not to do with
Yep.
Dermot, is they totally ignore the information coming from local firefighters. You have some kid with 6 weeks training telling 40-year-old firefighters what to do. Right? And that's the point I really want to
okay.
make, because it really aggravates me.
And sometimes that does occur.
Yes, and often that occurs.
And that is why I'm present inside the ICC, inside the management team, to ensure that we are gathering information from the brigades, and we will get better at that as we go on. It's no excuse, but I can assure you that I do have that discussion with a lot of people, and we do value the input from the local brigades, because I don't know what's going to happen in the fight when the fire comes here. If I was sent out here to fight the fire, the first thing I would do is find the local brigade and say to them, mate, what's going to happen? So, and that will evolve as we get along. You know, it's unfortunate, but it is recognised and it's progressing. Okay.
Just to say, there is a hotspot tracker, Department of Geo Science does it, I think.
Yep. So, yeah, for your, it would be, rather than you look at the hot, because it's not just the fact that there's a hot spot there, it's what it's what wind conditions and what the humidity and the moisture, the fuel moisture levels and so forth are in that area is what will determine what that fire is going to do and where it's going to go. It can burn as hot as it wants on a still day with high humidity, and it won't move. Yeah. So that's why we probably just give you the perimeter, and we ask you to trust us with our warnings.
Well, for those of us who understand, we talk about the hotspot,
Yep.
what would help be helpful.
Yeah, I understand.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for attending. Councillor Colin Toohey is my name, here representing Council. Paul, thank you for your very clear and honest summary of what's happening out in the community. What I would like to do is just to let everyone here know the Council is working very hard to try and put everything together that we need to support our community. We have a lot of those representatives in the room, so what I would like to do just very quickly is get some people up here to very briefly explain to you what it is that they do and what they can do for the community. So if I could ask Michelle from Orbost Ambulance to have a quick chat.
All right, so my messaging is to you, absolutely leave early, okay? Anyone who has vulnerable members of the community, if you've got elderly, the very young, if that means you go down and sit down at lakes for the day, that's what you do. You've wasted a day, fire doesn't come through, but if fire does come through, you'll be the best decision you've ever made in your life. So any vulnerable members, if you've got elderly relatives, people who are isolated, cannot fight these fires on their own, we need those people out of this community. If you have your fire plan and you are planning to stay and fight this fire, I'd say get out. That'd be my answer. You're going to be dealing with smoke, you're going to have health issues, and you may not have help coming. If you've got anyone having respiratory issues or likely to have respiratory issues due to their history, get them out of now and out tomorrow. Get them sitting down at lakes, in the library, in the relief centres, wherever you need them. If that means they're out of home for a day or a night, as we're saying, human life is the most important thing. If roads are cut off, we may not be able to get to you. You understand very much where you are here. You understand that the landscape around you is very volatile. I cannot stress enough, leave early. People saying, you know, what warning do we wait for? If they're giving you warnings and you're not staying to defend, that's the time to leave. Okay, like we did with Lakes Entrance, the less people we have in that community under threat, the better. I'll give you our experience at Orbost on Monday night. Everyone was saying, fires are 50 k's away. We're good. You know, we've got containment lines around. We're good. Jackson's Crossing, spot fired. All of a sudden the fires are in Jerrimond, okay? So all these people that were not expecting to be defending their properties were defending their properties. So these are things that we don't know where the new starts are going to come from. We don't know if we'll end up with them down at Marlow or in at Now an Hour. And I know it's fatiguing going through but we've got to evacuate again. I've evacuated 3 times so far. Okay, so that means I'm in town, I'm somewhere safe, because I'm not staying. I don't have the facilities to defend my property, so I'm in town. It is fatiguing, and I really, really get it, guys, but you've got to listen to those warnings and act early. Fire, once smoke affected, yep, wear masks where you can. Has anyone here got P2 masks? Is that available in this community yet? Nope. I'll make sure some get down here this afternoon so that they're available. Be aware, they must be fitted properly and they work for 4 hours. Then you need to change the mask, okay? You're going to be dealing with water quality issues from the smoke, and I'm sure some on tank water are already telling you it tastes like smoke. Use bottled water for drinking, and boil anything that you're using for other purposes. I'm using it for washing and watering the whatever plants I've got left, but bottled water for drinking. General hygiene. We have had gastro outbreaks in Bairnsdale and up at Mallacoota. Wash your hands, guys. Absolutely simple as. We've got people floating in and out of your community that are not normally here. So please, you know, just general wash your hands, especially when you're around the shops and things. I'm not saying the shops aren't clean or anything, but you've got people touching things. So last thing you want in the middle of a fire is an attack of gastro. That would be the worst. And I'll get to you in just a sec. The other thing I want to discuss is mental health. People are under a lot of stress. We've got people who live relatively isolated. There might be them and their husband or people living alone. Please look after your elderly neighbours, your young neighbours, everybody. Are you okay? Is not a stupid question. Make sure people have got communication and that they're being spoken to. These guys out here, when you talk about local knowledge, I've been in the ICC. They certainly use local knowledge wherever they can. And Dickie Johnson up at Orbost has been very much a part of all the planning. When you look at their predictive maps that you will have in the next 24 hours, the fires on Monday, they predicted absolutely everything except Jackson's Crossing, and that was a new start. So do pay attention to what they're saying. They are not beating this up. The media might be, but these guys are absolutely giving you the honest to goodness truth. So it's all right, I've got a few boxes. I'll make sure they get down here this afternoon. Yep. Rinsing your eyes out. We'll get some stuff down to you guys. If general store, is that the best place to distribute from at the moment? All right, we'll get some stuff down there for this afternoon. Washing your eyes out with a bit of saline or something, Visine if you've got it, it gives it a bit of soothing. I mean, so far I haven't been confronted by fire and I've got sore eyes and sore throat and all the rest of it. So anyone who's vulnerable, I advise for them to leave, even if it is just for the day. If now and now is not impacted tomorrow, happy days, everyone moves back. You understand, you've already been cut off a couple of times in all directions. It may take a day or two to get back, but at the end of the day, if you've got your arms and legs and you're still breathing, it's worth the effort, okay? So the very young, the very old, you don't want to be moving at the last minute. Move them out early, you know, even if you're coming back to defend, but have your fire plan, have your car packed. Don't wait until the warning to pack your car. Have it done tonight. Okay, so all those things, that's the last thing you need to be thinking of, making a decision what you're taking from your house. So anyway, that's my warning. Any help required, we will get to you as we can. We do have an ADF vehicle up at Orbost, so they are bush equipped. So we can jump in with the army and get to places that we normally wouldn't have been able to get to. But if there's fire activity, none of us will be coming. So you understand where you are and how isolated you guys are. We'll get up from Lakes, we'll come in from Bairnsdale, we'll come in from Orbost, whatever road's available to us. All right? Everybody take care. Look after yourselves.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, words of wisdom. So now I've also got Caroline from AgVic to speak just in regards to some animal welfare tips.
Hi everyone, yeah, Caroline Love from Agriculture Victoria in Bairnsdale. I assume we might have a few farmers here in the room. Basically just to let you know that we've got teams out assessing at the moment, and broadly across the region the good news is there seems to be less losses than people initially thought, which is fantastic. I'm going to be here after the meeting if anyone's got questions, but there is fodder available. VFF coordinating that. I've got the numbers for that. Anyone concerned about animals and in terms of any stock issues, there's support for that as well. Yeah, there's over 350 cases have been assessed so far. We've got teams coming out of Bairnsdale and teams in Orbost. We've got right through to Cairn River under escort, etc. So yeah, come and see me. And we also appreciate any of you that are farming. We're also still in drought. So there's still drought support as well, which I know doesn't seem such a priority now in the middle of the fire. But don't forget we're there. So even if you've got loss of pasture and you're wondering how much to feed your cows, that sort of thing, we've still got all that support available. So I'll stay after the meeting. You can come and see me then.
Thanks, Carolyn. So in regards to help, there is a lot of help that is available out there. If you do have access to the internet, the council does have a bushfire relief section on their website. There is also a number that you can ring. It is the plan that not one call goes unanswered. Now, we have had some issues getting that to happen, but that is what we would like to try and achieve. You know, we exist for your benefit, and I certainly, personally, that's the way I see it, and we need you guys. If there's an issue, let us know. Let us know, because we cannot tell what's happening out there unless people are telling us. Sorry, you've got a question there. Yep. Look, I'm not sure whether it's council's job or not, but I appreciate. Look, let us know, but let us. Have you let us know before? Sorry, my point. Okay. What I'll do, I'll be behind here. I'll give out cards. You can ring me directly. If you have any council issues, you are most welcome to ring me directly. I don't mind. This is our job. This is what you guys asked us to do. So I'm happy to do it. But you've got to ring us and let us know. Sorry. Hang on. I don't want to be yelled at. What I'm trying to do is help out here, okay? So I'll give you my card and you can ring me, absolutely. So, but, okay, we are trying to do things. As I say, our response is not perfect by any means. It's not perfect, but we are trying to improve it as we go, and we do need help from people to let us know where the issues are, what they are, and just keep us informed. We really do appreciate that. So I'll get Brendan from the CFA to give you some further details.
Colin, and I'd first of all like to let you know that, first of all, my name is Brendan Jenkins from Community Engagement with the CFA. We've been doing community engagement in these communities for the last 6 weeks. Before Christmas, many of us were down here. We're doing it again because we know that what works better than applying more resources that you don't have is working with your community and making sure the messaging is getting out there, making sure that everybody's speaking the one language. I do have to apologise for Paul Taylor, the Deputy Incident Controller, who spent a great deal of time here. He's not running away from here, he's running to Lake Tyers. He's going to another community to do what he did here, and they're running around to get to as many communities as possible. So thanks to Paul, and also thanks to Julian Davies, your local captain, and all the members of the CFA. I just stood down as captain of Moe South CFA in the Latrobe Valley. I know how much you care for your community, Julian, and all your members. I hope they're doing well, and I hope you continue to support them, the people in the community. On the subject of support, we do have some peer support people from the CFA. You'll see them with the fire rescue badges on. They'd be happy to talk to anybody here if you have any concerns, either of a personal nature or just want to have a chat. In fact, I'd recommend those people that are still here, have a chat with them, maybe about how you're feeling, but also they've got a great deal of expertise about fire issues as well. So use those people while they're here. And the final messaging about what we're trying to do with the CFA now and everybody's plans. Now, everybody must have a plan. It may not be the plan that I would dictate for you, but you must have a plan. And the bit you've got to do now is make sure everyone in the household understands the plan and understands the one plan. So if you're going to leave early, everybody knows what that means, because it may be that you're not in the same place. It may be that somebody's gone into town. Talk those issues through. What we need to do is not just a plan that's in somebody's head, but a plan, even on paper, sit down as a household, sit down and go through what it actually means. The safest place to be in the event of a bushfire is somewhere the bushfire isn't. My plan is to leave and leave early. My family, my wife and my son, all in the CFA, they're all leaving early, and we all understand what one another mean by that. So please, as a family, as a household, and if you've got other family up the road, other friends, I know in communities like this, a family is also the person up the road. A family is also the person you've known for 40 years. Make sure you understand what their plan is. Make sure they understand. We don't want people attempting to go and find somebody who's already left. That puts them in danger, puts fire rescue personnel, puts CFA people in danger. So please, please, have a think about your plan, have a talk about your plan, and get that sorted through. People are asking about the public info newsletter. We're trying to get, there's one coming out every day. We're trying to get it to places like the general store down here and any other public place, caravan parks, other stores, right throughout the district. We've got people going out every day in roles such as mine, but also we give them to any of the control staff to get them out there, so that you've all got the most up-to-date information. If you do start getting them and it looks, one day looks the same as the next, they have been updated, it's because that day is the same as the one before, but we want to make sure that we get something new out every day. If it does change, it'll be worthwhile information. You all know local emergency radio, 100.7 or 828 on the old AM dial. That's where I get my information for in terms of fires, but there's also your Vic Emergency app. Make sure you have a couple, and that might be where you get your trigger from when you're talking as a family. It's not when Dad says it's time to go, it's when the Vic Emergency app tells you it's time to leave. If leaving early is your option and your app says leave early now, leave. Don't hook the horse trailer up, that should have already been done. The horse should be somewhere safer, as should your caravan. You need to be able to move and move quickly. As Paul said earlier, you've got to be agile. So I think we've got through the trees issue. They are somebody's responsibility, but often somebody different's responsibility. So some will be the state government, Vic Roads, some will be council. If they're impacting or could impact on power lines, they may be AusNets. Ring up one of those authorities and officially make the complaint. Now, they'll be watching more and more. AusNet, for instance, have got a lot of people around at the moment. I know, having done it myself, that you ring and sometimes it doesn't seem like anything's happened. You ring now and there's a list of priorities. If you're a local and you know a 100-foot tree is now leaning at 30 degrees, it was never leaning before these fires, tell somebody. That's essential information for them to have to sort out the priorities. Look, thanks all for coming along today. I don't want to keep you any longer, but we do have great information out here, but also the individuals you see with the uniforms on, Red Cross, for coming along. We've got Vic and they're staying. The EPA, I think, we're here. Yep, the EPA are here. Paramedics, you've already heard from. Take the time to just have a chat, even if it's to say good day. We'd like to hear from you. There's a couple of questions up the back wall that we're putting down, trying to work out where people's issues are. No doubt some people put up their comments about where they think we could make improvements. We're improving all the time. I know it doesn't look like it, but we're doing our best. We're doing our best to actually serve you. So thanks again for coming. Can I wind up, Colin? And please, Colin's here. He's got his business cards. He's also got the phone number, paid for by you. So he's happy to hear from you at any time. And as are we down the back. Thanks again.